This is the second lesson in topic 27. We're going to be able to explain the effects of dimensional changes on both surface area and volume of two solids that are similar. And so we are looking at Mrs. Keith's class to begin with, who has begun an investigation on diffusion. And diffusion is simply the movement of material from an area where it has high concentration to an area where it has low concentration. Things that diffuse are like oxygen, water, carbon dioxide, which enter and exit cells by this process called diffusion. So this is very vital for living cells. You can see this process in this animation here. We'll refresh it so you can kind of see that. We'll get closer here. Okay, so we can see inside this process of diffusion is where oxygen is moving from the area of higher concentration to lower concentration. So it's diffusing out of the blood capillaries and into the body cells is what's happening here. So the oxygen is diffusing out of the blood capillaries and into the body cells. Here we can see the diffusion of the carbon dioxide that is going from the body cells into the capillaries. All right, so Mrs. Key's class will investigate diffusion using phenolphylene, Agar, and a sodium hydroxide solution. So Agar is just a gelatin-like substance that is used in many ways, including as a base for bacteria cultures. So phenolphylene is an indicator of pH, the measure of acidity of a solution. The sodium hydroxide reacts with this indicator in the agar and begins to change colors. The agar cubes simulate a cell body, and the sodium hydroxide is representing the materials that need to be diffused into that cell. So Ricky and Monique are lab partners, and to begin their experiment, they slice the agar into 5 cubes, with side lengths having 1 centimeter, 1.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, and 4 centimeters. And then they calculate the surface area and volume of each one of these cubes. So let's go ahead and answer this in our notes ourselves. So we know to find the surface area of a cube, we simply use the formula 6s squared. We have 6 faces that are squares. So to find the area of a square, it's side squared, and we have 6 of them. So we know 1 squared is 1 times 6. We give 6 centimeters squared as our surface area for the first one. Volume is length times width times height, but for a cube, they're all the same number. So it's simply that side length cubed, and one cubed is 1. So your units would be centimeters cubed on the volume. So for 1.5, we need to square 1.5 and then multiply it by 6. And so we get a surface area of 13.5 square centimeters. For the volume, we need to do 1.5 to the third power, which gives us 3.375 cubic centimeters. For a side length of 2, 2 squared is 4, times 6 is 24 square centimeters, whereas s cubed, 2 cubed, would be 8 cubic centimeters. For a side length of 3, 3 squared is 9, times 6 is 54 square centimeters, and 3 cubed would be 27 cubic centimeters. For 4, 4 squared is 16. 16 times 6 is 96, so square centimeters would be our surface area. And then 4 to the third power is 64, so 64 cubic centimeters here. So we can check our answers with those that they got and see that we are correct on all of those answers. So question 2 is saying, based on the data in our table, what happens to the surface area when the length of the side is doubled. So we started off with a side length of 1. If we double it, we go to the side length of 2. What happened to the surface area when we doubled the side edge? So when we double the side edge, the surface area was not doubled because 6 times 2 is 12, not 24. What was it multiplied by? It was multiplied by 4, so it was quadrupled, which means multiplied by 4. The second part of that question is what happens when it is tripled? Well, again, go back to your side length of 1. If you triple that, you get to a side length of 3. What happened to the surface area? It wasn't tripled, was it? 6 times what is 54? 9. So it was multiplied by 9. Okay, so now let's look at the volume. So what happens to the volume of a cube when the length is doubled? So again, we're comparing the 1 to the 2 or the 2 to the 4. It wouldn't matter, right? So 1 to 2, we're looking at volume. It went from 1 to 8. So it was multiplied by what? 8, right? You can see that here. 2 to 4, 8 to 64, multiplied by 8. So when the side length is doubled, the volume is multiplied by 8. What about when it's tripled? So 1 to 3 for the side length, that's tripled. Look at the volume. It goes from 1 to 27. So it's multiplied by 27. All right, so how is the scale factor between the cubes related to the ratio we found this for the surface area and the volumes? Okay, so if we are doubling the side length, then that means the ratio of the sides is 2 to 1. But we found that the ratio between the surface areas, it was quadrupled. So it became a ratio of 4 to 1, right? Our side length 2 over 1 gave us a surface area of 24 over 6, which is 4 to 1. When we tripled the side length, that meant the sides had a ratio of 3 to 1. Our sides were 3 and 1. Then what happened to the surface area? Well, our surface area went from 6 to 54. 54 over 6 is 9 over 1. Do you see something that's happening to this ratio to create this ratio? You might be tempted to say right here is, oh, it doubles. But then you look here, did it double? Nope. So what relationship is going on here that makes a 2 become a 4 and a 3 become a 9? I hope that you can see that means it's being squared. So whatever your linear ratio is, you need to square it to get the ratio of the surface areas. So think about these. Linear measurements are in linear units, right? These are centimeters. Surface area is in squared units, centimeters squared. So does that make sense that we're going to be squaring the ratio from the linear units to get the ratio of the surface area, which is squared units? Let's look at the volumes. So again, when we had that 2 to 1 ratio among the length of the cube edge, when we looked at the volume, this became an 8 to 1 ratio. So a side length that had a cube that had a length of 2 had a volume of 8, whereas a cube with a side of 1 had a volume of 1, right? So when we tripled it, remember our ratio was 27 to 1. What's happening this time to these numbers? What makes a 2 become an 8 and a 3 become a 27? I hope you can tell that that's being cubed. So this linear measurement is changing to a cubic measurement. And so the ratio of the linear measurements has to be cubed to get the ratio of the volumes. So Monique and Ricky think that they see a pattern in the surface area of the volumes, surface areas and volumes of the cube. So let's look and see what pattern they established here. So we have a 1 by 1 by 1 cube. So if we wanted to find the surface area of the cube, we know the formula 6s squared. Our s has a side length of 1, so 6 times 1 squared is 6 times 1, which is simply 6, and that's square units. The volume we know is s cubed. Our side is 1. 1 cubed is 1. So our volume is 1 cubic unit. Let's change our cube. Let's double the side lengths. So now every side has a length of 2. Now the surface area is 6s squared. We doubled the side length. So this is 2 times 1 squared, 2 times 1 cubed. So our surface area is 6 times 2 squared, which is 6 times 4, which is 24 square units. Our volume would be 2 cubed, which is 8 cubic units. Now watch how they have rewritten this. They wrote the 24 square units as 2 to the second power times 6, because 6 was our original volume, our surface area, of the first cube that had a side length of 1. And we doubled the side lengths. So do you see that? We squared that relationship to get our new surface area to be 24. Our new volume is 8. Our previous volume was 1. But we doubled the side length. So when we do 2 to the third power, because volume is a cubic measurement, then we get that new volume of 8 times 1, which is 8. Okay, so this surface area is 4 times as big as the first surface area with a side length of 1. And that's because we doubled the side length, and since we are using area, we need to square that relationship. Our new volume of 8, our old volume of 1, has an 8-to-1 ratio. And it multiplied by 8 because we doubled the side length, but then we have to cube that relationship because this is volume. So the volume is actually 8 times bigger when the side length's just 2 times bigger. So let's make it even double the size again. So let's think about this. Okay, so our original surface area, remember, was 6, but we're tripling that side length. The side length used to be 1, and it's now 3. So remember, for surface area, we're going to square that change. So since we tripled the side length, what is 3 to the second power? That's 9, right? So our new surface area should be 9 times as big as our original surface area. So remember, the original surface area with a side length of 1 was 6. So this surface area should be 54. 3 squared is 9. 9 times 6 is 54. Let's see if we're right. Looky there. Okay, so now let's think about volume. Okay, so our original volume, remember the side length was 1. 1 cubed was 1. Our original volume was 1. But we're tripling the sides, right? We're tripling the side length, so it's now a side length of 3. But to find volume, it's going to have that relationship cubed. What is 3 cubed? 3 cubed is 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. So our volume is going to increase by a factor of 27. It's going to be 27 times bigger. So since our original volume was 1, this new volume should be 27. So let's see if we're correct. And we are. Looky there. So we're establishing a pattern here that we can use to help us with similar figures. So question 4 in your notes says, what happens to the surface area of a cube when the length of the edge is multiplied by a factor of x? Okay, so if a cube's length is e, which it is to begin with here, then what is the surface area? So it's a cube, right? So remember, this face is a square, so it'd be e times e, which is e squared. And you have 6 of those faces. right? So the surface area of this cube would be 6e squared.